some of my guests a few minutes to be able to join me on the live. And based upon the last live or so that I did, I noticed how that was one particular person who happened to join my live and had some pretty demeaning comments to say. So, with that being said, maybe it would be best to invest in a moderator. So just in case I may, for future reference, happen to come across some more trolls, even if I may happen to come across a troll or two on behalf of this live, just so they could be able to remove those trolls. So I just wanted to get that off my chest right before I was to go full blast to what I have to talk about in today's live. And once again, I'm trying to give the people that plan on joining my live enough time to be able to join me. I probably right at the 3 to 5 minute mark give them that length of time to join me. Otherwise, I just go ahead and say what I have to say. And like it says in the title, this will quote unquote ruffle some feathers. So brace yourselves. And this is pertaining to a whole lot of my men strictly. Okay, I see one person decided to join. And thanks for joining, whoever you are. Well, one person just joined only to lead a live stream. Okay, so fellas, and once again, I'm referring specifically to my fellas. Imagine when you were much younger during your teenage years and you worked your very first job, right? And that job, that very first job, do you always imagine yourself working prior to starting your job? Was a job working at the local department store, better yet, the local grocery store, and you happen to be one of those employees who happen to sack groceries for the customers. You know the types that will sack groceries for the customers. When not that, when it will be some downtime, you may happen to have to clean up the store, certain areas of the grocery store, such as during an occasion whereas it may have happened to be a spill. So it just so happened a customer may have spilled something, may happen to have spilled something on one of the aisles, only for one of the managers or supervisors to inform any one of your coworkers, what it may have been either yourself or one of your coworkers, that there may have been a spill on aisle 9, for example. Whatever items they may have on aisle 9, because all grocery stores layouts are different. So you happen to be the one who happened to be randomly chosen to clean up that spill, to mop that spill. And it may have been, for instance, a jar of spaghetti that made a customer may have spilled by accident onto the floor, only for you to have to, by random, be chosen to clean up that spill. Imagine how fellas pissed off you were after having to be randomly chosen to clean up the exact spill that a customer ended up spilling by accident, or may have had a kid or so. The Because kids do some of everything just for attention. A kid may have been unruly, may have decided to do it on purpose just to get on the parents' nerves. Now, after having to clean up someone else's mess, listen closely. as I'm going much further with this analogy. Imagine, fellas, having no kids. You may have no kids. For all my fellas without kids, you may happen to come across a woman who may have happened to be a fellow classmate of yours who you may have went to school with, high school with, someone who you may have had one of the biggest crushes on out of all the other girls throughout your whole entire high school. And she happened to be everything you wanted in a girlfriend, from the long natural hair to having the perfect shape. I'm talking about an hourglass shape with a nice set of breasts, firm breasts. I'm talking about a size C cup, and she may have happened to have a pretty nice shape derriere. I'm trying to say, and excuse me because I do stumble across my words. You happen to approach her, and this may have been way back in the days, way before social media, way before cell phones. I'm talking about during the 90s or the 2000 through 2010 decade. Maybe I would say around the year 2001 as an example. You may have built up the courage to find an approach that high school crush of yours only for her to shatter your ego and reject you. After all, she's beautiful. She has the perfect set of teeth. She has nice, long, natural hair. She's very intelligent. Makes nothing but A's and B's. Well, made nothing but A's and B's throughout all the way throughout high school. She happened to compete in a few extracurricular activities. For instance, may have partaken in playing in the band. If not that, may have been a cheerleader. Only for her to reject you and be into the guys, the exact guys that treated her like she was beneath them. Only for her to be into the exact types of guys who may have been buttholes, the guys who may have happened to be popular, the jocks. Now, fast forward to 10 years later, you may happen, hey, Mr. Meth, Gabriel Meth, thanks for joining. You may have happened to spot that same exact high school crush of yours at a local grocery store, and after seeing her at a local grocery store, she may have happened to spot you, the two of you may get to talking, right? And y'all may have a good long conversation after wondering what the two of you may have been up to for the past 10 years. Now, this same former high school crush of yours may not have any kind of social media page, believe it or not, due to how so many people nowadays like to communicate and reconnect with former classmates or schoolmates through social media. That's just the norm nowadays. Now, and I would say, as a hypothetical name, Brandy. Brandy, after graduated from high school and fast forward to spotting her running into her at a local grocery store 10 years later, may have happened to be even more sexier. The only drawback is she happens to have a kid. And not only that, but she wants to know you better, get to finally know you better after having the kid by a guy who she didn't marry, and one of those same guys who happened to be one of the most biggest jerks in high school. She happened to get her heart broken, lower her standards, only to want to give you the time of day finally, want to give you a chance. Once again, the only thing is, the only downfall is she has a kid. However, not caring really how she may happen to have a kid, fast forward to 10 years later, you happen to exchange phone numbers and get to know her better anyway. Get to know, want to take her out eventually and be intimate with her. My point in saying this is there are so many men that are in this same exact situation. There's so many men who are playing the role of the quote unquote cleanup man. As a matter of fact, I was reading a study earlier today, and this is on behalf of how over 16.5 million men throughout the U.S. alone happen to be stepfathers, happen to have to take on the role of stepfathers. 16.5 million men, 15% of all men in the U.S. as well, have to usually or are taking on the role of being responsible for being the stepfather of another man's kids. This is a sad, at the same time, truthful reality of how so many men nowadays have to take on a role similar to the analogy that I came earlier of how when you may have worked your first job as a teenager at a grocery store, and you may have been one of those types of employees who may have sack groceries just to earn extra money throughout the summer, right after high school. You may have happened to have some days where you had to go on certain aisles of the grocery store only to have to clean up spills on behalf of another customer, creating those spills, having to clean up someone else's mess. Well, fellas, this is the once again sad truth of the matter. The majority of us men, whether we may want to or not, we have to take on the role once again, fellas, of being the quote unquote cleanup man. Due to that being so many women nowadays when kids out of wedlock. And as a result, so many men, whether we may want to or not, especially on behalf of us brothers who may not have kids of our very own, who always will want to know, will always wonder what it would be like to finally be able to find that perfect someone, that perfect female who didn't happen to have kids as well. Someone who could be able to start our very own legacy, our very own first family with, only for her to have in some instances as many as 4 or 5 kids, and to make matters even worse, having 4 or 5 kids by around 4 or 5 different men, because that seems to be the norm, whether you know it or not. More women, whether we know it or not, and especially in the Black American community, are having more kids by more than one man, which is making it where not only do the majority of us guys have to take on the role of being a quote unquote cleanup man, and by cleaning up another man's mess, so to speak, or the spill, so to speak, from another man, but we have to also take on the role of not being respected in the relationship of marriage due to how so many women nowadays, fellas, are having kids. Each and every day there's a different woman, a new woman getting pregnant by a man who she's not married to, much less engaged with. And whether you know it or not, single mothers are becoming that much more younger on top of that, because I know this may sound pretty sad and scary at the same time, but there are women, young women that are single mothers as young as 14, 13 years old, making it where that same young man within her age bracket may happen to take on a high possibility of having to take on the role of being in a relationship when a young lady who has kids already from a previous relationship. And then even worse, having to watch over your back, fellas, as a result of dating women who may happen to have kids by another whole other guy, and that guy being a guy who's very toxic, a guy who may have done time in prison, a guy who may have done all kinds of heinous crimes and may have had to serve prison time. Therefore, once he was to find out that the woman who he may have had kids with is dating somebody else completely different from himself, chances are he may have a big problem with her dating a whole different man who's not the father of his kids, and may usually threaten that guy in some of the most harmful ways. This is the sad, once again, reality that a lot of us fellas are dealing with, due to how, if you may be a guy, even if you may be a guy who may want even one woman, well, want a woman with just one kid, chances are it's just as hard as finding a woman without kids at all, almost. Even if you once again may want a woman, or once more may desire to be with a woman with a kid, when a minimum of just one kid, and due to how women are becoming more and more promiscuous as well, due to how also more and more women are trying to compete with men as a result of us men, so many of us men, but because so many of us, whether we know it or not, we like to go and have kids by woman after woman after woman, due to how we look at that as being the true epitome, the true definition of a man. But that doesn't make you a man. To me, that's being sexually irresponsible. Once more, fellas, so many of us, whether you may want to hear what I'm saying or not, me preach this sermon, might as well say, are having to take on the role of being the cleanup man in relationships and marriages, due to how so many women are having more and more kids by more and more random men, and having to take on the role of being the step parent to a kid that'll never respect you. And then, even to make matters even worse, you can't discipline that kid like you would desire. You can't even much, half the time, get respect from the mothers, due to how you'll always be looked at as a second priority, as you could also say a third party. And not only that, but how many of you, for some of you who may take full pride in being a stepfather or taking the role of being responsible for another man's kids, or in most cases men's kids, how many of you could say that anytime your kids may go to the store for Father's Day to look for Father's Day cards, how many times have you ever noticed the kids to be able to see or buy you a stepdad card to honor or acknowledge how good of a role you may have done in being a stepfather? I have yet to see any cards dedicated to stepfathers, but I have seen quite a bit dedicated to biological fathers, to real fathers. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and make sure you also like the video, you share the video, last but not least, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'm out, guys.